and moderator of Christianity Today's flagship news podcast, The Bulletin. We are joining you live tonight, a little bit more relaxed than Tuesdays and Fridays. We're letting our hair down tonight. We're so glad to have you join us. Be sure to say hi in the comments and tell us where you're coming from. Joining me tonight are our senior commentators, Mike Cosper and Russell. How are you guys doing tonight?
Hello.
Mike, can you hear me? Oh,
Good.
it's awfully quiet.
Happy to
There he
be
is.
here.
Oh, okay, good. Good, good. You're in a tie, Mike. You look very formal this evening. Is there a reason for that? You're just
Well,
dressing up for the occasion?
yes, it's, Bulletin After Dark. You do, cocktail attire is what I
Yeah.
was understanding that the rule was. No, I was actually speaking today at the St. Meinrad Arch Abbey in Ferdinand, Indiana. I was with the Benedictines for the afternoon. They've been listening to the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill,
Wow.
and wanted to have a
What do
conversation
Benedictines think of the rise and fall of Mars Hill? I'm curious to
about
know.
yeah,
Hmm.
Hmm.
He's coming in slow.
Yeah,
It's that slower pace from being in a monastery all
that's what
day.
it is. He's taking the Benedictine rhythm with him
Yes.
here.
They don't do a vow of silence, do they?
No, no, but I am curious to know what they would have thought and what they would have taken away from Rise and Fall of Mars
Yeah,
Hill.
I
That's
know.
yeah.
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Mike,
Hey,
what was that
I'm
conversation like?
back. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really terrific. I mean, it was part of what was so interesting about it was hearing them talk about.
You're still here. It's all good. We're going to keep encouraging you. Keep going, Mike. Keep going.
Am I? Am I still here?
Yes.
Okay. It was fascinating to hear them talk about the issues, where
Hmm.
Oh my.
I don't
Well,
know.
they talked about this Carmelite monastery in Colorado where the leader was this was
Hmm. All right. Well, we're going to hope that the powers that be can send Mike away and bring him back to us in just a little bit.
that's an interesting point though about I am curious to know what he heard from there because I used to go a lot to Gethsemane Abbey
Mm-hmm.
in Kentucky where Thomas Merton was. And one of the things when you actually read about, I mean, everyone has this sort of, well, if you're in a monastery, then you're free from all of the, and
Yeah.
you read about what was going on for Merton and all of these disputes
Mm-hmm.
and fights and personality conflicts and everything else going on. Human nature is human nature.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. How is it different now than even during Merton's time? I mean, social media and phones, all of these
Hmm.
things that people are giving up to enter into those spaces and enter into those commitments. How do you think it's different now than it was even for him?
I don't know because he writes about how distracted he was. He would have to make a commitment not to listen to the news.
Really?
Or to read the newspaper. I mean, for
Hmm.
him, that was so. If you read Merton talking about his attention and how he has to protect his attention, it sounds like he's writing about a smartphone, and
Wow.
he's just talking about the the newspaper or Walter Cronkite or whoever
Hmm.
on television at night. So I think it would probably be a similar sort of struggle. Just, I mean, he was literally at the time he was writing this, he was a hermit.
Yeah.
So there's just
Wow.
there's just not a there's not a place you can go to sort of check
Yeah.
out of those kinds of problems, I guess.
Yeah. Now, have you ever been on like a silent retreat or one of those kinds of things that are offered by monasteries?
No, I just would go. I would go for a day and walk around because there are a lot of woods around
Hmm.
the abbey that I could walk through those and just pray and think, spend a little bit of time in the sanctuary itself. But no, I never did anything formal like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even I know that for a lot of folks during the Lenten season, we're what, a week away from the beginning of Holy Week. And a lot of folks try to engage in practices of silence and solitude, kind of stripping away during this season. And I admit that I begin well, usually, but it is very hard to steal away and find silence or to embrace solitude and not feel that it is oppressive noise, even in the silence. Yeah,
I think I do the opposite.
really.
I begin badly because, and I remember even being there at
Hmm.
Gethsemane Abbey, and I didn't have access to my cell phone at all.
Hmm.
And I felt like, oh no, what's going on that I don't know about?
Really?
And this went on for until gradually you become accustomed to it, and then you realize I really haven't missed anything that I can't keep up on
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah,
Yeah, later I get caught up on later.
yeah. You kind of relax into that silence.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, Mike, welcome back. You're
Let's see how
here.
it goes this time.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have been talking about monastery living, the monastery lifestyle. What did the monastery find interesting about the rise and fall of Marcel?
You know what was fascinating? They started describing basically the same situation happening inside parishes, other monasteries. They talked about there's this Carmelite monastery in Colorado that I don't know the details of it, but they were like this guy, you can imagine an abbot of a monastery overseeing all the monks who was a Mark Driscoll like figure.
Did they like chant, "Who the hell do you think you are"? Is that what?
I don't think they did, but there was definitely a sense of like one guy talked about how he was really divided between do I go to he had to choose between St. Meinrad and this Colorado thing, and he said I felt much more naturally drawn to the Colorado thing because the guy was so compelling and persuasive. Like you really felt like, oh, there's a movement happening here. And he said, and then my kind of Hoosier Midwest sensibility made me go, I kind of don't trust that actually.
Oh,
And so he chose the Benedictine thing, and then like a year later, that other monastery really collapsed.
Hmm.
wow, wow. So they found themselves in that story.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. Unfortunately,
yeah,
very familiar.
yeah. Wow. Well, it's I feel like every time there is a new denomination that has an expose of some kind, it is it is a reminder to me of the humility with which we must approach our particular ways of accessing the divine, of pursuing our faith, because whether we are in a monastery or we are in a megachurch or we are in a small New England church like I am, we are all susceptible to those influences and cravings toward power and ambition and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, very interesting, very interesting.
I mean,
Well,
you look at the
yeah,
conflicts going on at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, literal
Yeah.
yes,
fistfights
mm-hmm,
taking
mm-hmm,
place at the very site where Jesus was resurrected from the
yeah,
dead.
Right.
And you realize this is not easily just pruned away or disciplined away.
no,
So
not at all.
somebody, one of the questions I often get asked when I talk about Marcel, people are always like, "So is this unique? Is this a unique thing inside the church?"
Mm-hmm.
And I always point them to one of my favorite episodes of This American Life, which is called Petty Tyrant. And it's about a guy who was the superintendent of the janitors
Yes.
in a local school system in New England, who ran it like a mob boss. He ran this office
Wow.
like a mob boss and would just make life miserable for you. If you crossed this guy, your bathrooms weren't going to have toilet paper.
Yeah.
Nothing was going to be cleaned. The water would run brown. I mean, it was wild listening. It's wild listening to this story, and it's really like, to me, it's just a lesson in kind of the crooked temper of humanity.
Mhm.
It's like it's not that it happens in the church and also other places. It's that this is what human beings do with power, and the church is not immune to it unless, well, she's not immune to it, and which is why she needs safeguards and structures of accountability.
Yeah.
That is a great episode. And I resonated with that episode because the lady who cleaned my home church was not a tyrant. She wasn't misusing power, but she had more authority just
Oh
in
yeah.
terms of her personal presence than
Yeah.
anybody in the church. People were terrified of her
Right.
because when she said, "Get out of this building right now," you would leave. Just because it's not that you were afraid she was going to do anything to you. You just didn't want to disappoint her. She
Right.
has had that kind of presence.
Amazing.
Well, in attempting to segue into the topics for the evening, we might say that perhaps she had the menacing disposition of Narnia's White Witch. I don't know, but
No, she was more Aslan like.
okay.
I'll be fair
Well,
to her. Yeah.
then
It was
we
a
really
regal
need to talk.
authority,
Yeah,
Melissa, not
regal
a
authority.
Regal.
That's a good way. Yeah.
Well, then, Russell, I'm going to want to definitely hear from you on this first one because last week, Deadline, that Hollywood news rag, announced that Meryl Streep was being considered for the role of Aslan in Greta Gerwig's new Narnia movie. So the Narnia movie is going to be released Thanksgiving of next year through like this limited release via IMAX, and then it will be streamed after that through Netflix. And they're going to be doing a bunch of Narnia movies, apparently. Brought in Gerwig for this first one, which is going to be The Magician's Nephew. And I'm trying to
Oh
remember.
my word! Are you serious? I did not know this. So
Yes.
we're just adding abomination upon abomination. This is okay. Go ahead.
Okay,
I'm
so
sorry.
well, we let's order the abominations then. Is that we're beginning with the magician's nephew? Is it that it's Greta Gerwig? Is it that it's Aslan as Meryl Streep? Where do we begin, Russell?
Do we have to choose? We've walked through the wardrobe into an entire domain of where it is. This movie is where it is always winter and never Christmas, apparently. So you start with having Greta Gerwig do a Narnia movie, which is not a good mix of people and genre anyway. Then you add to it the fact that you're taking. I did not know until just now that they're starting with the magician's nephew.
Oh, I'm sorry to
I
bring that up
I
live.
kind of can do an IQ test on somebody based upon how they order the Narnia books. And if it's somebody who starts with the magician's nephew, unless they do it accidentally,
Uh-huh.
they don't understand how stories work. The entire point of the magician's nephew is to see all of these echoes back of, oh, that's where the lamppost came from. Oh, I recognize this. And so it's just that's even worse. Then you add to it turning turning the Chronicles of Narnia, particularly, into this kind of unhinged sort of commercial property. I mean, there's the Eagle and Child pub where Lewis sat with Tolkien and Barfield and others. Apparently, has now been bought by a tech firm. So I'm
Oh,
just trying to imagine, Lewis sitting there thinking that Nice now has his pub.
yeah.
I can't even imagine saying Greta Gerwig is doing Narnia Chronicles. That's more than I can handle.
Is Magician's Nephew, is it book 4, actually?
I think Magician's Nephew is next to the last. So
Next to the okay, so
next
it's
to the
even
last.
further.
You
Okay.
you you end with the last battle.
Yeah, yeah.
But as a matter of fact, I have a box set on my desk right now of the original editions,
Mhm.
of the paperback of the original editions, and I have reordered it. They have them ordered one, and they put Magician's Nephew. I have pulled that out and put it in the proper place. So, as I look up at my map of Narnia right there, I
Right.
can salute and
Wow.
say that I've been a loyal soldier here.
Mike, do you feel as strongly?
Well, listen, I am a very deeply established Greta Gerwig hater. And
Oh, I
so,
thought you loved Greta
I thought,
Gerwig.
yeah,
oh,
that's what I thought too.
no, 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 no,
I
no,
thought you
no.
liked the Barbie movie.
Listen, I thought of all of her films, I thought that one was well done, right?
Okay.
Like, And there were actually some things that I think she unintentionally did very well at the end of that movie. I don't think she realized what she was saying with the end of that film, or she would have ended it in a very different way. Because the end of the film is a celebration of biological womanhood, which is not a common sentiment in Hollywood these days. I defy anyone to watch Greta Gerwig's Little Women and Winona Ryder's Little Women
Yeah.
and tell me that Greta Gerwig's is actually better. And you only need to watch one scene. Watch any scene where they're sitting around the dinner table in Greta Gerwig's version. When you actually stop and pay attention, the editing is so insane, it will make you nauseous to actually try to watch this thing. I can't imagine how awful this Chronicles of Narnia is going to be. So yes, I'm a firmly established Greta Gerwig hater. Here's the thing: I love Meryl Streep.
I do
I'm a
too.
big Meryl
Yeah,
Streep fan.
yeah.
I do too. Meryl Streep would be perfect as the White Witch because I mean she could take all that Devil Wears Prada energy.
Yeah.
That would be phenomenal. As Aslan,
Aslan is not going to have a mane. It's going to
Well,
be a
okay,
girl
but
lion,
do we
right?
know this? I think that's speculative right
I mean,
now,
are they
isn't
gonna
it?
are
I
they gonna
mean,
gender bend Aslan and give Aslan? It'll be a male lion with a female voice.
so what? So the best thing we can hope for here is a transgender Aslan. Is that what we're
I
saying?
think that's the
mean,
best we're hoping for is transgender
I didn't mean to
Aslan.
walk into that.
No, I guess you didn't, but it.
You didn't do it. Greta Gerwig did.
Greta
It.
Gerwig did.
Yeah. Okay.
And you know, here's the thing. Here's why this actually matters.
Yeah.
Is because of what Lewis is actually doing with Aslan, which is
Yes.
to have several things. I mean, one of them is an echo of Lion of Judah imagery from Revelation and from Genesis, but also to have this, to have enough similarity under the surface to Jesus, where there's something recognizable there, but enough ambiguity that that people can, as he puts it, you can sneak past the watchful dragons because people have associated everything is so familiar to them in kind of stained glass sort of pictures to sneak past that with Aslan. That this completely, I fail to see how in any world it is possible to just completely deconstruct the whole thing this way.
So is this kind of like that new Snow White movie that we talked about just a couple weeks ago on the show on Friday? Is it this meta modern kind of we're gonna change some of the stuff and make it extremely modern and
I
all
think
knowledge is context and
I think
then
there's
we
I think
also
there's a better way to put it than that actually.
okay.
I think what it is, this is true of Snow White as well. This is someone trying to tell a story that they don't understand. They don't understand the imagery of the story.
Okay.
They don't understand the meaning of the story. They don't understand, like, why is Aslan a male lion? Male lions are not hunters. They're not workers. They're fighters, right? In a pride of lions, the males defend the boundaries and the females are the hunters. That's so the idea of a masculine lion, the imagery of the masculine lion is this is the warrior. This is the warrior king, right? So there's all kinds of layers of symbol and image that, if this is true, and again, this is a buzz thing, but
Yeah.
it's been kind of everywhere. It seems like it's probably a thing they're playing around with. Maybe they'll learn a lesson from the disastrous box office of Disney not understanding a story.
And this will be worse.
Yeah.
This will
Yeah.
be worse because
I
with
agree.
Snow White, you do have Disney redid Snow White in all kinds of ways from the original fairy tale, of course. Taking Chronicles of Narnia when you have a huge constituency of people who have been shaped and formed by those books, who
Yeah.
would, I mean, I wouldn't go to that movie without a court order. And I mean, who is going to watch this?
Greta Gerwig fans,
Greta Gerwig fans,
I
guess.
16-year-old girls, because what she'll do is she'll put Timothy Chalamet in it, and then the 16-year-old girls will show up.
Don't even go there. Don't
Who
go
is
there.
who is
Don't go
Timothy?
there
Is he
with me.
Mr. Tumnus? Is this Timothy Chalamet?
I don't know.
That could be darling. Well, okay, so how do you feel about Liam Neeson then? Because he was the voice of Aslan, right? Like a decade ago. Um,
I
you
never
were
saw
good
any
with.
of those
I
films, so I
never
have no
You
saw
idea.
didn't see those either.
one
Okay.
minute of the
All
Narnia
right.
movies.
All right. So you're
I cannot
purists.
afford to lose the Narnia that I actually encountered as a kid. I really can't.
I
And
honor
so
that. Yeah.
I
Yeah. I
just
haven't seen the Lord of the Rings
I
movies. I
haven't
believe.
either.
No,
I haven't either.
I want the
Y'all
book.
are crazy. Those are good.
Yeah.
You're
No,
crazy. They're
no.
they're he the first the first trilogy, the director's cuts. Jackson did a great job. They're worth watching.
Well,
Anyway, we can move on.
good for them,
I don't know.
but not for me.
Well, listeners, put your thoughts in the comments. Let us know. Are you a book purist, or are you willing to go see the movie that a book is
I'll go
derived
see the
from?
movie on most things, but
Okay,
there are limits,
there are
and
limits.
Inklings are a limit that I won't cross when it comes to movie properties.
Well, stick your questions in the comments for us. We would love to hear from you and answer your questions tonight. But speaking of other things where we have limits, there have been some limits in the Department of the Interior that have been pressed upon in the first few months of President Trump's new administration.
Hard pivot.
And
Hard pivot in the
Yeah,
conversation
that's
it's a
here.
quite a
hard pivot.
segue from
That's it.
Like that?
Ashland
Yeah,
to
you see how
Doug
that,
Burgum.
Doug Burgum. Here we go. Uh, Michael Shearer and Ashley Parker had this fun piece in the Atlantic this week about Doug Burgum, who apparently
You know
has
what's
a
kind of like Turkish delight is chocolate chip cookies.
yes. Thank you. Look how well that was done. Yes, he's got a sweet tooth, but he has far more resources to make that happen than I do. Apparently, the piece I love the name, the cabinet secretary who wants his cookies freshly baked. It made me. I was telling Mike earlier today. It made me think of when I was in high school and we did those Otis Spunkmeyer
Mm-hmm.
fundraisers, and you would get this big box, a cardboard box with these frozen balls of cookie dough. Apparently, Doug Burgum has been asking his cabinet appointees, these folks who are working for him, to regularly bake cookies for him and for his guests using the industrial ovens that are in his building. They also have been waiters for him. He has taught them to stack his firewood so that it doesn't fall and make noises when guests are around. He's even ordered them to go back and remake the cookies when they're bad, which is hard to imagine if they're starting with frozen balls of dough. Um,
Well,
so
you can burn a cookie. You can burn a frozen ball of dough. That's for sure.
I can
Listen.
burn anything. Just ask my children. Well, the Department of Interior doesn't make big money. In fact, I did a little research, did some digging that the Bison Bistro that was in their building is actually still closed. Closed during the
Okay.
pandemic, and it has never reopened. So I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on Doug Burgum and his desire for fresh baked goods? Is this a legitimate expectation for a smaller cabinet appointment, or does he have an inferiority complex?
You know what? I'm willing to, for a sane, competent cabinet member in these times, I'm willing to let him have all the cookies he wants. Doesn't bother me
Yeah.
in the least.
Okay.
Look, to me, this story, I read this story, and it just sounds. I hate to, I don't want to project on anyone I don't know here, but it just seems so obvious that you've got somebody who was really excited about getting to work in the interior, Department of the Interior,
It is the best department.
really important job, and they're like, wait a minute. So I'm like, you know, executive assistant to the administrator of the executive of the administrator of the executive. And you're telling me that in spite of the fact that I just graduated from, the University of North Dakota with my political science degree, that I have to bake cookies on a regular basis for the secretary?
Oh, so you're saying
I'm
this is a
calling the
Gen Z
Atlantic.
gripe?
I'm calling the Atlantic.
Yeah.
We're burning this guy down
Yeah.
because he's making me bake cookies. That's what this thing read like to me. And I'm kind of like, you know what, dude? Like, entry level job, bake the cookies. Like, get over it. You're lucky to be in the room. Listen, learn a thing or two, and in a few years you'll be having somebody bake cookies for you.
Wow. Well, you're
I think it's a
really,
Gen Z job gripe. Yes, I think it's
really.
100% a Gen Z job gripe. Reading the piece.
Yeah. I mean, when I was 19 years old, working for a U.S. congressman, he was no diva. As a matter of fact, he was probably the least diva-ish member of Congress then and to this day. But yeah, I mean, if he wanted a butterscotch shake from Arby's, I was going to go get a butterscotch shake from Arby's and then learn from him while we're walking downstairs with it, what education policy ought to look like. I mean, that's how it
Yeah.
works.
And I'll throw this in the mix too. So I know nothing about like the interior life of the political, you know, this world.
Is this a pun? Or you, or you?
No, no,
I
no, no,
like
no.
where it's
Oh,
going.
okay. The
No, no.
interior
I,
life. Okay.
you know, that's good. That's good. But no, I didn't intend that. I wish I had. But the world I do know is the production world, right?
Mhm.
And I've been in a lot of situations. I mean, especially like 15, 20 years ago, I was in a lot of situations where I was the guy lucky to have gotten in the room for like a recording session or something like that. And my natural instinct in a situation like that was, you know, somebody in the room says, "Hey, does anybody want some coffee?" When you're the bottom guy on the totem pole, you go, "They want coffee? Where do I go get coffee? I'll go get the coffee. I've got it. Give me your orders. I'll take care of it. I'll take care of everything." And to this day, I mean, just a few months ago, I was in Nashville where I was producing some sessions, and we had, you know, you had a bunch of people working on some stuff, and you had the like, you know, the essentially that person, the 20-something-year-old, freshly graduated from Belmont University. They're there in the studio, one of the most expensive day rate studios in the city of Nashville. And this was like the representative from the studio. And this dude had no ego whatsoever. He would have done anything. He would have gotten us cheeseburgers. He would have gotten us coffee. He would have done anything for us. So uh, that's the way you build relationships inside an organization. That's the way you build relationships, you know, in an industry is you show up and you serve and you do grunt work. And at some point, having done that grunt work, there comes a moment where you're able to say, "Oh, actually, I know something about what you're talking about, and I can contribute."
Hmm.
But it takes a while, and this just feels to me like somebody who's mad that they're not at the table, and that they're actually being sent out of the room to go bake cookies.
Agreed.
How do you respond though to, I want to press in on both of them because how do you respond to the, you're just grumpy old men, oh, these kids today, that's kind of the, have we not created a a culture, an environment that is falsely egalitarian? I mean, I even think about teachers. I was a teacher for a very long time. We never called our students friends. And now it's, all right, friends, we're going to all sit down together. Well, no, we're not friends. I'm the one in charge.
Yeah.
I'm the teacher and you're the student.
Hmm.
Have we, I mean, before we sort of race to blame Gen Z for being the people who, I mean, we see this in studies, right? They don't want to show up to work. They don't want to do, they don't want to, they want to be able to work from home and get all the perks and yada, yada. Have we not bred them to be this way?
Well, I think one of the key problems in any sort of workplace is a fake kind of egalitarianism that the bosses don't believe for a minute, nor could the organization work
Hmm.
if it were actually true. But the people who are just starting out do believe it's true. And so you have this sense where if those who are actually leading the organization pretend like they're asking for permission to make decisions that the people they're asking don't know how to make those decisions. That's why the place is structured the way it is. That is going to lead somebody to think, well, why in the world am I not the one who's crafting what the water policy ought to be in Montana?
Yeah.
Right.
That's I think where a lot of it comes from.
Do we need to go
Yeah.
back to cubicles and corner offices then, Mike, instead of these sort of like, let's tear down all the walls and even the boss doesn't have to have an office anymore?
I mean,
Like, do we need
sure.
to return to some kind of hierarchy?
No, maybe that's it. I just have a hunch. Look, I don't know Doug Burgum. I've never met Doug Burgum, but I did follow him pretty closely in the primaries.
Yeah.
Doug Burgum had the best logo of any presidential candidate, I would say, since the 1970s. It was fantastic. And I felt the Bergmentum. I was hoping for the Bergmentum to come through. It did not. So I say this as someone with bias. I have
I
affection
think he
for Doug
was
Burgum.
too.
However, I don't, from what I know of Burgum, I don't imagine that he's setting up like, he's onboarding people with a kumbaya. We're all colleagues here,
No, no, no. I don't think
and
that.
setting that kind of thing up. I think that he's again, I think this is like a projected set of expectations that people are bringing into it. And frankly, I think probably the place to look is not in the marketplace or even in the governmental institutions for the problems, but in the academy, in the way we do things with schools, the way we coddle kids. And that I think is probably more to blame than anything else for this.
Well, I just, you know what? I want to take a pause here and give a shout out to Pamela, who says in the comments that she's a teacher and she's 100% with me. Thank you, Pamela. I appreciate that. Thank you, friend, shall we say. Well, if cookies are the things that bind us together and or divide us, I think there's more food conversation on the way because we need to talk about our third topic for tonight, of course. What is in your Apple Jacks? So I'm wondering, just before we get into this, when is the last time you ate Apple Jacks, Frosted Flakes, or Fruit Loops? And it may have been in a Hilton Garden Inn breakfast line.
A month ago, because we don't allow them in our house because I will eat all of it.
Oh my goodness.
I would, if I were given the opportunity, I could eat Apple Jacks for every meal. So we keep it,
Wow.
we keep it as far away from. There have been times when my kids have brought some in the house, but they hide it in places and do not tell me that it is here, at my request. But occasionally I have found it. And I just can't. It is Turkish delight when it comes to that and Pop Tarts. You cannot bring Pop Tarts into this house,
Oh, wow. Okay.
especially grape Pop Tarts, which are hard to
Oh.
find, but they are amazing.
Oh,
Oh, I will fight you on this, Mike. They are amazing.
oh. That
I'm
is-
pretty sure, Mike, you don't even go to the hotel breakfast line, do you? So you wouldn't even interact with any of these cereals on a
No,
regular
no, no.
basis.
I do the hotel breakfast line.
Okay.
And I like a sugar cereal. My sugar cereal of choice is Golden Crisp, which is like the wheat puffs that are coated with sugar.
Oh, that feels very Southern to me.
Oh, they're so
as a
good.
New
They're very
Englander.
good. Yeah. I don't know that it's Southern. That
No?
feels
Okay.
that
Do you
feels
eat?
inappropriate.
Do either of you eat your cereal with a non-milk liquid, like orange juice or no?
What
Okay.
is wrong with you?
No, that's
Orange juice?
yeah.
I'm a grape nuts
Oh.
girl. I'm a
It-
grape.
Oh,
Wait, grape nuts and orange juice?
No, I eat them dry, which is even worse.
oh my word!
You
I
and-
think
you and John
Meryl
Piper.
Streep Aslan has taken over your mind or something. This is
I have it on good authority that John Piper eats grape nuts for breakfast every morning and has
Really?
for like 6 decades.
Oh wow.
So there you go.
Christian
We're ju-
hedonism.
We're just gonna let that hang out there.
Just
in
gonna
the
let that hang
internet.
out there for a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. leave it.
Well, you know-
I have not had Apple Jacks probably in 25 years or more.
Okay.
I can't remember the last time I had an Apple Jack or a Fruit Loop. But I like a hotel. I mean, just to defend my reputation, I like a hotel breakfast. I love a hotel biscuits and gravy. I'm all about that. You can't screw up biscuits and gravy because even if the biscuits are dry, the gravy isn't. You just pile it on there.
You
It's
know what
good.
you also
Oh,
can't screw
no.
up is Boo Berry.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
around
Oh,
That's
Halloween
yeah.
good.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again,
Well,
haven't had it in 25 years, but it's good. I
Well,
remember.
this feels a little bit like staging an intervention for Russell then to talk about this because the Hill reported this week that the Texas Attorney General is investigating Kellogg's for a potential violation of the state's consumer protection laws because apparently Kellogg's has been promoting Frosted Flakes and Apple Jacks along with a few other cereals as healthy when hint hint they're not actually good for you. Some of the apparently Fruit Loops includes petroleum-based artificial food colorings. RFK Jr. he said recently that Fruit Loops were poisoning our kids with bright colors. And so, this is a topic about cereal, but it's perhaps a topic about making America healthy again. Um, I'm not exactly sure. Uh, do we say maha? Maha?
I'll tell you what we do. We don't destroy cancer research and fire the most brilliant minds in the NIH. We
Yeah.
don't try to convince people not to take life-saving vaccines. And then we can talk about how much food dye is somewhere. I don't have, I'm perfectly happy to have the research say whether food dye is safe or unsafe, and let's make the decisions that way. But I mean, my word, when we have the crises that we have
Hmm.
right now in terms of
Yeah.
global health and American health,
Right.
and instead what we do is all of this tribal signaling. That's just absurd.
Yeah, well, our episode with Dr. Lydia Dugdale dropped today about measles and public health. And it just, in reading this story, certainly, but a lot of these other health stories, whether it's about measles, RFK wanting to take fluoride out of water, which I know is controversial in some spaces in the US, even things like Dr. Oz being the new Medicaid administrator, it feels like stuff having to do with health is really upside down right now.
Yeah.
Is this a product of the pandemic largely, or is this something that if you could look back, almost like David Brooks did in that beautiful piece he had in the Atlantic this week about sort of looking back what I should have known, should we have seen this coming?
So I think there's a knee jerk reaction that blames COVID when we talk about these things right now,
Okay.
because COVID was definitely a massive disruption to our culture and caused people to ask a lot of questions. But actually, I think the problem is the knowledge crisis. It's not so much about COVID as it is that the the average American consumer of information does not know how to differentiate between thoughtful, thoughtful science, thoughtful skeptics, and kooks and conspiracy theorists. And I think this gets especially difficult. It drives me nuts. So one of the most popular podcasts in the world right now is the Joe Rogan podcast. And Rogan does something that frankly, like, you can kind of go back in time and see Jon Stewart was doing this 20 years ago. And I think it was a problem for Jon Stewart back in the day, which is that Jon Stewart would do these long segments on his show where he would just hammer George W. Bush. And then he would, he'd show up on Crossfire or something like that. And they would say to him, "You're so biased, you only punch one direction," or whatever. He'd go, "What are you talking about? I'm a comedian. That segment was followed by puppets making prank phone calls. You can't take anything that I say seriously." But of course, like, he wants to be taken seriously. It's the reason he's doing politics, is he wants to be taken seriously. Rogan does the same thing. Rogan has people on that are cranks. I mean, RFK Jr. is like the chief crank that he has on, but he has people on that are cranks and conspiracy theorists and everything else. And then at the very end of the show, he'll do this thing where he goes, "Well, man, I'm just curious. I'm just asking questions. What do I know? I'm a comedian." And he tries to sort of have it both ways, where he can have these people on, and literally, like, one of the conspiracy theorists who's like a big Maha guy, who actually says that the problem right now for the problem with RFK's agenda is he's not able to keep his agenda going. He's not able to advance his agenda because Jews are blackmailing him and keeping him from doing it. Is this guy Ian Carroll, and he has Ian Carroll on, and Ian Carroll says, I mean, 3 hours of crazy nonsense on this show, and then in the
That's the
last
World
like
War II guy.
no, Ian Carroll is another guy. Ian Carroll's like a TikTok independent researcher guy who what he shares with Daryl Cooper, the World War II guy, is anti-Semitism. And but Ian Carroll, they do this thing for like the last 25 minutes of the show where where Rogan and Carroll sit there and they say, you know, this is what's so great about the new media environment. You know, 30 years ago, you couldn't talk about this stuff. You didn't have an outlet for this stuff. You couldn't get this stuff out there. But now we've broken down all the barriers, and we're the pioneers, and we're the new media, and we're this, that, and the other. And then literally moments later, Rogan is saying, well, you said it, I didn't say it. You know, I'm just asking questions, you know, and they try to sort of, so Rogan in particular, I think, is extremely guilty of having it both ways. He wants to be able to say, hey, I'm just a comedian, I'm asking questions. And then he wants to have bat guano crazy garbage spewed on his show for 3 hours, you know, multiple times a week with no accountability or anything else. And they brag about the fact that they don't have, you know, they don't have to deal with the gatekeepers of the mainstream media or anything else like that. Well, the reason they don't have gatekeepers is because if they had gatekeepers, they would have fact checkers. And if they had fact checkers, they would sit there and go, Ian Carroll, you're just making stuff up, and it's hot garbage. Anyway, obviously I feel really passionate about this, but I think it when it comes to a lot of this like Maha stuff, this health stuff, all of this, I mean, RFK Jr. is extremely guilty of this as well, where he'll go on, you know, he'll do all this stuff to sort of subtly undermine or directly undermine the notion of vaccines and vaccines as effective. And then when somebody really sort of sticks a mic and a camera in his face and says, well, are you saying not to get vaccines? And he's saying, I'm not saying not to get vaccines. I've never said that. And it's like,
well, that's
like,
what he did this
universe
week.
are we living in?
Right.
Like,
That's what
we
I mean.
all
He went
heard you 5
he went-
minutes ago.
Yeah, he went to visit the family of one of the children who died in Texas, and I can't imagine showing up in that space of very raw grief, and then takes to X to say that the best way to prevent measles is the MMR. Yeah, you can't have it both ways, or at least, well, you can't, but it sort of boggles my mind that people are willing to suspend disbelief to allow
Right.
those kind of things. Like what, if, as Jeremy has commented in the comments, does anyone actually think Apple Jacks, Fruit Loops, and sugary cereals are healthy? Like, if we actually don't believe those things, what does it require of us to suspend our disbelief to keep following someone who's talking out of both sides of their mouths? Like, why are we doing that? Does anyone know?
I don't have an answer to that one.
2025.
I need an answer. I need an answer. Okay. Well, I'll just go back to eating my grape nuts then.
Well, look, I mean, I think if you want to, if you want
I want
to
to
honest
understand.
answer to it,
Yeah, I mean,
I think the problem is that we approach people approach this stuff tribally, not rationally. It's all about, who do you hate? Do you hate the same people I hate? Are you suspicious of the same people that are you mad at the same people that I'm mad at? And there's all this pent up, and this is where I think COVID does play a factor. There is all this pent up rage post COVID because people feel like their incomes took a hit, their retirement took a hit, their kids experienced learning loss and haven't recovered yet. And there's their marriage took a hit because they were forced to live indoors with their
and now you're
spouse
telling
for-
me there was a lab leak lie? It's sort of like layering on that.
Right. And so what I think happens is it's the classic psychological truth that anger is always a secondary emotion. There's all this pent up grief, and sadness and depression and everything else that kind of came from all of that. And the most comfortable way and the safest way culturally, because we have a culture that doesn't deal with grief very well at all. The safest way to express that is rage. So you look for the first outlet to kind of pour that kind of rage onto. And I think the reason RFK has had such traction and has overcome his reputation for being an absolute crank is because people were looking for any excuse necessary to the enemy of my enemy is my friend. They wanted somebody who was mad at the same people they were mad at. And I
Well,
think that's
and
his
one of
success.
the ways that you can see that is that you will have the same group of people who were screaming at Michael Bloomberg for restricting the size of big gulps at
Right.
7-Elevens
Yeah.
in New York City, going in conferences, carrying Sarah Palin. Remember, carried a big gulp up there to the stage with her to say, "You're not going to mess with this." Same thing when you had the question of healthy foods in cafeterias, schools. Who is the
Right.
government to tell us what we're going to eat? Who are the very same people who are we've got to get rid of all of your food dyes. I mean, those things don't consistently go together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. How can I be part of the solution and not a part of the problem then? I mean, the pull toward tribalism is so strong, even for those of us who desire not to participate in that kind of environment. Are there practical first steps besides getting off of social media?
I don't even think it's a matter of getting off of social media. It's a matter of um, having an attention span that is actually able to concentrate. And the way
Mm,
that you do that is with extended periods of being able to be immersed in something else. I mean, that's a key part of it. And also, so it's kind of two things that seem to be contradictory. You need to have time alone in our case in scripture. You also need to have actual human relationships. I mean, if you look at, I mean, we all know. I can think of somebody Mike and I know and have known for years, constantly haranguing everybody about whether or not they're drinking Diet Coke or
mhm,
so forth and so on. And you're like, why do you eat? Why? I mean, I can see why you might think this, but why do you care what
mhm,
this random stranger is doing? And usually, it's a lonely, miserable kind of person
mhm.
who just needs some connection. I think
Hmm.
that's the way we avoid some of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you talk about connection, it makes me think of this study that I read about people who are no longer Christian but are still going to church. Like they so desire connection that they're willing to sit in the pew on Sunday, even if they don't believe anything that's being preached from the pulpit. Um, that longing is pretty strong. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I want to give a shout out to Stephen Simons because I just read his comment and I need to share it with you guys. I tried Reese's Puffs with iced coffee, Stephen said.
With iced coffee poured
With
in it instead
uh-huh,
of the
that's
milk.
okay. Yes, I
Now
tried
that is
Reese's
next
Puffs
level.
with iced coffee, and then he says I was foolish. I don't
Well,
know.
I have to
Yeah,
respect it. I mean,
yeah. It,
Yeah. Yeah.
boy, I'll bet that crash was something in an
Oh
hour.
man. A lot of
Wow.
sugar, a lot of caffeine. Oof.
oh my goodness. Well, Stephen,
To
for
top it
for
off with some bourbon, Stephen, what was going on?
for even attempting that combination, Stephen, we're going to send you some swag tonight, okay?
Heck
Yes.
yeah.
Because
Steven
I
needs
mean,
swag. He needs a
wow.
coffee mug. You know what he needs? He needs a
Yeah.
coffee mug. For sure.
It does. Oh my goodness. Yeah, definitely. So, Stephen, make sure to write to us at podcasts at christianitytoday.com with your address, your mailing address, because we want to send you something to keep that iced coffee in that's not a cereal bowl. We're so grateful that you all have joined us tonight from Pennsylvania and Charlotte and Mississippi, Brandon, Mississippi. Do you know where that is,
Oh,
Russell?
absolutely. Yes, right
Okay.
near Jackson.
Awesome.
Mhm.
And Orlando, I'm assuming that's Orlando, comma, Kansas, comma, not Orlando, Kansas. But Orlando and Kansas, Florida, Missouri, y'all have been a wonderful audience. We're so glad that you could hang out with us for this hour on Tuesday night. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on Friday at our next roundtable
But
episode.
I'll be
We've got,
played by Meryl Streep.
oh my goodness,
This is what drives me so
he's
nuts about
going
this.
back to it.
She's such a great actress that if she wanted to play Russell Moore, I think she could do it
I
convincingly.
think she could do it. Yeah.
Well, show up on Friday morning and you will see. Uh, Justin Gibney and Matthew Lee Anderson are joining us. Paul Miller's going to be there. It's going to be a great time. Thanks for being with us tonight. We're going to sign off from the Bulletin. Have a great night. All right. Thank you so much.